From the Canadian Broadcasting Centre, here is Ben.
Of your past.
A BC clinic's tantalizing claim about a controversial drug called Ibogaine. A special report by Duncan McHugh.
The National.
At risk for death.
A BC clinic's controversial treatment for desperate drug addicts. And point of view. Imagine a drug that promises to cure an addiction to crack cocaine, painkillers, even heroin, and often with just a single dose. That's the buzz these days around Ibogaine. But does it deliver on that promise, and is it safe? CBC's Duncan McHugh headed north of Vancouver to the only Canadian clinic offering Ibogaine therapy, where he followed one addict through her treatment.
For a lucky few, it could be the end of a long trip.
Can't exactly tell someone when you go to immigration that you're coming here for treatment for drug addiction. Probably wouldn't let you in.
This man, Marc Emery, is offering to cure addicts. He isn't a doctor or an addiction specialist. He's a businessman who in the past 6 months has become a self-styled healer, dispensing a little-known drug called Ibogaine. He's so enthused about it, he's telling anyone who will listen.
I treat people for drug addiction, hardcore drug addiction, yeah, and we have a very successful treatment. It actually stops, drug interrupts methadone, heroin, crack cocaine use right away.
Any side effects to this?
None whatsoever.
Emery and his assistant Sandra are waiting for their latest client.
Pink red shirt, blue jeans, strawberry long hair. Hey, how you doing? Eliana, I'm Mark.
Eliana Quinet has come all the way from Ohio.
No trouble through customs immigration. You look like our ideal kind of tourist. That's good.
Hers has been a life of addictions. As a teenager, she got hooked on heroin. Then she switched to painkillers.
They were always, from the very beginning, simply something that I happened upon and found that it was a way to escape.
I mean, you don't have like a strong sense of yourself.
Drugs were part of her secret daily routine, helping suppress her relentless anxieties about her failed marriage, her job as a nurse, her 3 daughters. But a steady drug supply wasn't easy to come by, and she fought temptation to steal pills from the clinic where she worked. So, 6 years ago, she turned to methadone.
You know, I really need to make some changes in my life.
You're going to go back totally clear, I assure you.
Wow.
There are few treatments for heroin addiction. Methadone is one, a man-made narcotic that's supposed to help wean an addict off opiates. But it didn't work for Eliana. She got hooked on methadone.
If you have to go more than, say, 24 to 48 hours without methadone, you know that you're going to be very, very sick.
She knows because she tried going cold turkey once. The vomiting, sweating, skin-crawling shakes lasted days.
The pain is so bad. There's no words for it. I mean, and it never goes away. 12 days later, 12 days of laying on the floor, banging my head against the floor, trying to create some kind of alternative pain, you know, to distract. Screaming, crying, just, you can't sleep.
You'll feel no craving or need to return to the drug-abusing behavior of your past.
Emery is full of promises as they ride the ferry to Sechelt, just north of Vancouver, where he conducts Ibogaine treatments. He first administered Ibogaine last fall.
It's a full moon tonight.
Yeah, it is. This is amazing.
It's supposed to be a very good omen to take Ibogaine on a full moon.
His 21-year-old son had come home in bad shape. He'd been using heroin for 3 years and wanted to quit. Methadone wasn't helping. Emery had heard about Ibogaine's reputedly miraculous properties. It didn't take long to get some.
After we administered both his girlfriend, who was an addict, and himself, I mean, the change in him was remarkable. They became robust. It was as healthy as I'd ever seen him since he was a young man, and so I was extremely impressed.
So impressed, he established an experimental clinic he calls the Iboga Therapy House. Here on the Sunshine Coast, Emery has treated 24 addicts so far. The average treatment lasts up to 4 days. Emery says some need 2 or 3 doses to break hardcore addictions, but he claims most are now clean.
The Ibogaine will return you back to your normal state, as well as clear and detox you.
Each treatment costs Emery about $2,000. He provides it free. Generosity made possible by a controversial enterprise that's made him rich. Emery sells marijuana seeds on the internet. He has 24 marijuana-related convictions, but lately, police have turned a blind eye to his seed business.
We do $3 million in seed sales a year, and that's how we pay for the Iboga Therapy House, which will run to about 60, 80 grand a year.
Like the weed that finances Emery's operation, Ibogaine is a natural drug. It comes from the roots of an African shrub called Iboga. For centuries, tribal groups in Gabon have chewed the root bark in religious ceremonies, believing it allowed them to communicate with their dead ancestors. Reports that a hallucinogen from Africa somehow cured addiction emerged in the 1960s, when an American junkie in search of a new high discovered it eliminated his heroin cravings. As word spread, underground clinics began springing up in Europe. Small groups of addicts reported Ibogaine helped them stay clean for an average of 6 months. Some claimed to be completely drug-free. That sparked the United States National Institute of Drug Abuse to shell out $2 million to study Ibogaine. It looked like the wonder drug was on its way to the mainstream. But here in the United States, Ibogaine has come under attack. Many dispute whether the drug actually works or whether it's even safe. In fact, the federal government considers Ibogaine illegal, citing evidence that it may kill brain cells and that it may even cause death.
I think the big concern is that you have a drug which has a lot of risks.
The Drug Institute's director, Frank Vocci, says the majority of the scientists they consulted didn't think much of Ibogaine.
Well, they weren't terribly impressed with it, frankly. I mean, I remember they were asked, so what is the success rate? And they said the success rate is 1 out of 8 people. And one of the doctors said, well, gee, I can do that with behavioral therapy. Why should I want to risk giving a drug to someone if that's it?
The risks can be substantial, according to studies on rats by Dr. Mark Molliver at Johns Hopkins Medical School. The drug slows down the heart and speeds up the brain. Large doses are highly toxic. In some animals, Ibogaine caused seizures, in effect destroying parts of the brain. No one was sure what it was doing to humans.
The risks are that you may have a problem with your heart, and your heart will slow down and possibly stop. There may be a risk to your brain. Your brain could suffer some long-term damage as a result of taking the drug. And there's also a potential risk of a seizure.
Vocci says research funding was halted after reports surfaced of 2 patients dying after taking Ibogaine. One Swiss woman who had a history of heart disease, and a French woman who may have used heroin while on Ibogaine. But in both cases, it wasn't clear whether Ibogaine was to blame.
You try to evaluate whether or not this would make it to market. And when you come down and you say, there's just too many problems with this drug.
Here, you take that. The reason we give you that first is to test out that there's no allergic reactions from your liver.
But it's full speed ahead at the Iboga Therapy House. Emery says he screens his clients' medical files, and he won't accept anyone with psychiatric or heart problems or other health conditions. He's unfazed by the risk of complications.
Doesn't it worry you that someone could die?
Oh, no.
Why?
Because these people might die anyway. I mean, they're hardcore drug users. I mean, many of them are all at death's doorstep when I meet them.